The Riverside Police Department headquarters had been empty for 5 years. Budget cuts forced the department to consolidate into a smaller building across town. The old station was supposed to be demolished, but city funding ran out. So it stood there. 3 stories of brick and broken windows. Evidence rooms full of forgotten cases. Holding cells that still smelled like despair. But on a bitter February night in 2024, someone broke the lock on the back door and slipped inside. Her name was Barbara Mitchell. She was 71 years old. And she was hiding from something that had been chasing her for 43 years. What Barbara found in that evidence room wasn't just old case files and dusty boxes. It was the truth about the night that destroyed her family. The night the police closed the case. The night everyone stopped looking. The night her daughter vanished. Stay with me because this is a story about a mother who never stopped searching. A system that failed her. And the evidence that was there all along, locked away in a room nobody bothered to check. Barbara Mitchell's life ended on June 15, 1981. That was the night her daughter disappeared. Sarah Mitchell was 16 years old. Beautiful. Smart. Full of dreams. She told Barbara she was going to a friend's house to study. She kissed her mother goodbye. He walked out the door. And she never came home. Barbara waited until midnight. Then she called the friend. Sarah had never arrived. Barbara called the police at 12:47 a.m. The officer who took the report sounded bored. Teenage girls run away all the time, ma'am. He probably went to see a boyfriend. She'll come home when she's ready. But Sarah didn't come home. Not the next day. Not the next week. Not ever. Barbara filed a missing persons report. She put up flyers. She called the police every single day. The detective assigned to the case was named Frank Morrison. He was 45 years old. Overworked. Cynical. He interviewed Sarah's friends. Checked her room. Asked Barbara if Sarah had seemed troubled. Any problems at home? Any reason she might want to leave? Barbara told him no. Sarah was happy. He had plans. She was supposed to start her senior year in 3 months. He wanted to be a veterinarian. He would never just leave. Detective Morrison didn't believe her. In his experience, mothers never knew as much about their daughters as they thought they did. Sarah probably had a secret boyfriend. Probably got pregnant. Probably ran off to start a new life somewhere. It happened all the time. He told Barbara to be patient. Most runaways come home eventually. But days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. And Sarah didn't come home. Barbara kept pushing. Kept calling. Kept demanding they do more. Search more. Look harder. Detective Morrison got annoyed. He told Barbara she needed to accept reality. Sarah was gone. She chose to leave. There was no evidence of foul play. The case was classified as a runaway. Barbara refused to accept it. She hired a private investigator with money she didn't have. She spent every penny of her savings. She quit her job so she could search full-time. She drove to every city within 300 miles, showing Sarah's picture, asking if anyone had seen her. He became obsessed. Her husband, Michael, begged her to stop. To move on. To accept that Sarah was gone. But Barbara couldn't. Wouldn't. Her daughter was out there. She knew it. He could feel it. And nobody would help her find her. After 2 years, Michael left. He said he couldn't watch Barbara destroy herself anymore. He said Sarah would have wanted them to keep living. Barbara didn't care what Sarah would have wanted. He cared about finding Sarah. The private investigator ran out of leads. Barbara ran out of money. But she didn't stop. For 43 years, Barbara Mitchell searched for her daughter. She never moved from their house in case Sarah came home. She never changed her phone number in case Sarah called. She never gave up hope. Even as she got older. Even as everyone else forgot. Even as the police file collected dust in storage. And then last month Barbara saw something on the news. The old Riverside police station was being prepared for demolition. Before the building was torn down, they were moving evidence from cold cases to the new facility. A reporter stood in front of boxes and boxes of files. Decades of unsolved cases. Barbara's heart stopped. Sarah's case. Was it in one of those boxes? Had there been evidence all along that nobody bothered to look at? Barbara called the police department. They told her she couldn't access the evidence. It was police property. She could file a request, but it would take months. Barbara didn't have months. The building was being demolished in 3 weeks. So Barbara made a decision. She would go to that police station. She would find Sarah's case file. She would look at every piece of evidence. And she would find the truth. Even if she had to break in to do it. Barbara waited until dark. She brought bolt cutters, a flashlight, and a determination that had kept her alive for 43 years. She cut through the fence. She broke the lock on the back door. And she walked into the abandoned police station where her daughter's case had been ignored, dismissed, and forgotten. The police station was eerie at night. Barbara's flashlight beam cut through darkness, illuminating desks covered in dust, chairs knocked over, papers scattered on the floor. It looked like everyone had left in a hurry. Coffee cups still sat on desks. Calendars from 5 years ago hung on walls. Computer monitors sat dark and dead. Barbara moved through the building methodically. First floor, reception area, administrative offices, break room. Nothing useful. Second floor, detective offices, interrogation rooms, records room. Barbara's heart raced as she pushed open the door to the records room. Rows of filing cabinets. Thousands of case files. Barbara started searching. She found files from the 1980s. Burglaries. Assaults. Homicides. But not Sarah's. Where would they keep missing persons cases? Barbara spent 2 hours searching before she found it. A cabinet marked Missing Persons 1975 to 1985. She pulled open the drawer. And there was Mitchell Sarah. Case hashtag 810624. Barbara's hands shook as she pulled out the thin folder. So thin. 16 years of life reduced to a dozen pages. Barbara opened the file and started reading. Initial report filed by Barbara Mitchell on June 16, 1981. Daughter Sarah Mitchell, age 16, failed to return home. Last seen leaving residence at approximately 7 p.m. Said she was going to friend's house. Friend states Sarah never arrived. Detective Morrison's notes from the first week of investigation. Interviewed friends. Nobody saw Sarah after she left home. Checked boyfriend, didn't have one. Searched room, nothing suspicious. Mother insists foul play but no evidence to support. Classification. Probable runaway. Barbara felt rage building. They had done nothing. Less than nothing. They had decided within a week that Sarah ran away and stopped looking. But then Barbara found something else in the file. A note clipped to the back. Anonymous tip called in August 1981. Caller stated they saw a girl matching Sarah's description getting into a blue van on Henderson Street around 8 p.m. on June 15. Man driving appeared to be in his 40s. Caller couldn't see license plate. Detective Morrison's note beneath. Tip not credible. No corroborating evidence. Did not pursue. Barbara stared at that note. Someone had seen Sarah. Someone had called it in. And Detective Morrison had dismissed it. Had never even investigated it. Barbara's hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the file. Why hadn't he followed up? What else had he dismissed? Barbara needed to see all the evidence. Everything collected during the investigation. Where would it be? Evidence room. Barbara had seen the sign on the first floor. Barbara made her way back downstairs and found the evidence room. The door was locked, but the lock was old. Barbara used her bolt cutters to break it. The door swung open and Barbara stepped inside. The room was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling shelves packed with boxes. Each box labeled with a case number and date. Barbara searched for hashtag 810624. It took her 40 minutes, but she found it. A box on a high shelf in the back corner. Like someone had deliberately hidden it. Barbara pulled it down and opened it. Inside were paper bags and plastic containers. Each one labeled with a date and location. Barbara started going through them. Sarah's backpack, found abandoned on Henderson Street, June 17, 1981. Barbara's breath caught. Henderson Street. The same street from the anonymous tip. Sarah's backpack had been found there. 2 days after she disappeared. That meant Sarah had been on Henderson Street. Just like the witness said. This proved the tip was credible. So why had Morrison dismissed it? Barbara opened the next bag. Sarah's wallet. Found with backpack. Cash still inside. Credit cards untouched. If Sarah had run away, why would she leave her money and ID? Barbara kept searching. A torn piece of fabric. Blue denim. Found snagged on fence near Henderson Street. Possible evidence of struggle. Barbara's heart was pounding. Evidence of struggle. They had physical evidence suggesting Sarah didn't leave willingly. and they had still classified it as a runaway? The next item made Barbara's blood run cold. A cassette tape. Interview with witness. August 1981. Barbara found an old cassette player on a shelf. Her hands shook as she put the tape in and pressed play. A woman's voice. Nervous. Frightened. I saw her. The girl in the picture. I saw her get into a van. A blue van. On Henderson Street around 8 o'clock. The man driving. He was older. Maybe 40s. White. Short dark hair. He smiled at her. Called her over. He walked to the van and got in. Like she knew him. Like she knew him. Barbara's mind was racing. Sarah had gotten into a van with a man she knew. Or a man who had convinced her he knew her. A man who had smiled and called her over. Barbara listened to the rest of the tape. The witness described the van. No windows in the back. Some kind of logo on the side, but she couldn't read it. She gave her name and phone number in case police needed to follow up. Detective Morrison's voice came on at the end of the tape. Thank you for calling. We'll be in touch if we need anything else. But they had never called her back. Barbara checked the file. No record of any follow-up interview. No investigation into blue vans. No attempt to identify the man. Nothing. They had evidence. They had a witness. They had a location. And they had done nothing. Barbara sat on the floor of the evidence room and cried. For 43 years she had believed Sarah was missing. That nobody could find her. But the truth was worse. People could have found her. Should have found her. If they had just looked. If they had just cared. If Detective Morrison had done his job. Before we continue with what Barbara discovered next, I need you to understand something. This story is about a mother who was failed by the people who were supposed to help her. If you're watching this and you've ever felt like nobody was listening, like nobody cared about your pain, hit that subscribe button right now. We tell the stories of people who suffer because the system fails them. Your subscription helps us keep telling these important truths. Now let's see what else Barbara found in that evidence room. Barbara spent the entire night in the evidence room. She went through every item in Sarah's box. She read every report. She listened to the witness tape 5 more times. And with each piece of evidence her rage grew. This case could have been solved. Should have been solved. The witness had given a clear description. Blue van. Middle-aged white man. Henderson Street. That was enough to start an investigation. To check businesses in the area. To look for vehicles matching that description. To canvass the neighborhood. But none of that had been done. Barbara decided to look at other cases. He started pulling boxes at random. Missing persons cases from the same time period. The pattern was horrifying. Case after case of young women who had disappeared. And case after case where Detective Frank Morrison had been the lead investigator. And case after case classified as runaways with minimal investigation. Jennifer Harris, age 17, disappeared July 1979. Last seen on Henderson Street. Case closed as runaway. Michelle Cordero, age 15, disappeared March 1980. Last seen on Henderson Street. Case closed as runaway. Lisa Templeton, age 16, disappeared November 1980. Last seen on Henderson Street. Case closed as runaway. 4 girls. All teenagers. All disappeared from or last seen on Henderson Street. All within 2 years. All investigated by Detective Morrison. All classified as runaways. Barbara felt sick. This wasn't coincidence. This was a pattern. A serial predator. Operating in the same area. Taking girls the same age. For years. And Detective Morrison had either been too incompetent to see it or deliberately ignoring it. Barbara kept searching. She found more cases. 8 girls total between 1979 and 1982. 8 girls from the same neighborhood. 8 cases investigated by Morrison. 8 cases closed without real investigation. And then Barbara found something else. A file that wasn't supposed to be in the evidence room. Personnel file. Morrison Frank. Detective. Barbara opened it. Inside were complaints. Dozens of them. Families of missing girls complaining that Morrison wasn't doing his job. Wasn't following leads. Wasn't taking their cases seriously. Wasn't returning calls. And the department's response every time was the same. Detective Morrison is handling a large caseload. He is following proper procedures. Your concerns are noted. But there was one complaint that was different. Filed in 1983 by another detective, Detective Maria Santos. She had written a formal memo to the chief of police. I have concerns about Detective Morrison's handling of missing persons cases involving teenage girls. Multiple cases show similar patterns, similar locations, similar circumstances. Yet Detective Morrison has consistently classified these cases as runaways without thorough investigation. I believe there may be a serial predator operating in our jurisdiction and we are failing to investigate. I request these cases be reviewed by someone else. Barbara held her breath as she read the chief's response. Detective Santos, your concerns are noted. However, Detective Morrison has been with this department for 20 years. He has an excellent record. I trust his judgment on these cases. Focus on your own caseload. This memo is to be considered closed. Detective Santos had tried to help, had seen the pattern, had raised the alarm, and she had been shut down, told to mind her own business, told that Morrison knew better. Barbara kept reading Santos's personnel file. She had resigned from the department 6 months after that memo, left law enforcement entirely. The system had failed her too. Barbara now understood what had happened. Detective Morrison had deliberately misclassified these cases, had ignored evidence, had dismissed witnesses, had shut down anyone who questioned him. Why? Was he incompetent, lazy, or was he covering for someone? Barbara thought about the blue van. The middle-aged man. Morrison was in his 40s in 1981. What kind of vehicle did he drive? Barbara searched through his file. Found his parking permit application. Vehicle, blue Chevrolet van. License plate listed. Barbara's world stopped spinning. Morrison had driven a blue van. The same description as the witness had given. Morrison had been the man who took Sarah. Who took all those girls. And he had used his position as the investigating detective to cover up his crimes. To dismiss evidence. To silence witnesses. To close cases before anyone could find the truth. For years. Right under everyone's noses. Using his badge to hunt. Barbara couldn't breathe. The man who was supposed to find Sarah had been the man who took her. Barbara's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the files. She needed to get this evidence out. Needed to show people. Needed to expose what Morrison had done. But would anyone believe her? She was an old woman who had broken into an abandoned police station. Morrison was probably retired now. Protected by the system that had enabled him for decades. Barbara needed more. Needed proof that couldn't be dismissed. She started searching for anything else that connected Morrison to the disappearances. She found a box of his personal effects. Items cleared from his desk when he retired. A calendar. Notebooks. Photos. Barbara went through everything. In one of the notebooks she found something that made her blood run cold. Dates. Just dates written in the margins. June 15, 1981. July 12, 1979. March 8, 1980. November 2, 1980. Barbara cross-referenced with the case files. Those were the dates the girls had disappeared. Morrison had been keeping track. Recording his kills like trophies. The monster had been documenting his own crimes. Barbara gathered everything. Morrison's personnel file. The notebook with dates. The witness tape. The evidence from Sarah's case. The files of all 8 girls. She piled it all together. This was proof. This was enough to reopen every case. To expose what Morrison had done. To finally get justice for Sarah and the others. Barbara pulled out her phone to call the police. But then she stopped. Call the same department that had protected Morrison for years? The same department that had ignored Maria Santos's warning? Would they even listen? Or would they find a way to cover this up too? Barbara is facing an impossible choice. Trust the system that failed her or take matters into her own hands. But before we see what she decides, I need you to do something. If this story is making you angry, if you're thinking about all the times the system protects the guilty instead of the innocent, hit that like button. Leave a comment telling me what you think Barbara should do. And make sure you're subscribed because what happens next will shock you. Now let's continue. Barbara didn't call the police. Instead, she loaded all the evidence into her car. She drove home as the sun was rising. She spread everything out on her dining room table. And she started making calls. First, she called Maria Santos, the detective who had tried to stop Morrison. It took hours to track her down, but Barbara finally found her. Maria was 68 now. living in another state, working as a private investigator. When Barbara explained who she was and what she'd found, Maria was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "I knew it. I knew he was dirty. They wouldn't let me investigate. Told me I was being hysterical." Maria agreed to help. She drove 18 hours to meet Barbara. When she saw the evidence spread across the table, she started crying. 8 girls, Maria whispered. "I could have saved them. If I had pushed harder. If I had refused to let it go." Barbara shook her head. "They would have fired you. You tried. They shut you down. Now we finish what you started." Together, Barbara and Maria built an airtight case. They documented everything. Created timelines. Connected the dots. They found that Morrison had retired in 1995 with full pension and honors. He was now 84 years old. Living in a nice house in the suburbs. Never charged with anything. Never suspected of anything. Barbara and Maria decided to go to the media instead of the police. They contacted an investigative journalist named Rachel Kim, who had a reputation for exposing corruption. Rachel met with them, looked at the evidence, and her eyes went wide. "This is huge," Rachel said. "A serial killer hiding behind a badge for decades. Multiple victims. A department that ignored warnings. This is going to blow up. Are you sure you want to do this? Are you ready for what comes next?" Barbara looked at Rachel. "My daughter has been missing for 43 years. I'm ready." Rachel's story ran 3 days later. Retired detective may have been serial killer. Evidence suggests at least 8 victims. Police department ignored warnings. The article went viral immediately. National news picked it up. The police department was forced to respond. They opened an investigation. They brought in outside investigators. They excavated Morrison's property. And they found bodies. 3 of them. Buried in his backyard. DNA testing would take time, but the remains were consistent with teenage girls. Missing for decades. Morrison was arrested. At 84 years old, he was charged with 3 counts of murder and suspected in 5 other disappearances. The trial was a media circus. Barbara attended every day. She sat in the front row and stared at Morrison. This man who had smiled at her for years. Who had taken her calls. Who had pretended to search for Sarah while knowing exactly where she was. Morrison never looked at her. Never showed any emotion. His lawyer argued he was too old to stand trial. That he had dementia. That he couldn't assist in his own defense. But the prosecutor brought witnesses. People who remembered Morrison. People who had tried to report suspicious behavior and been ignored. Maria Santos testified about her attempts to investigate. Rachel Kim presented the evidence Barbara had found. The notebook with dates. The personnel files. The witness statements that were never followed up. The pattern that was obvious to anyone who looked. The trial lasted 3 months. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all 3 counts of murder. Morrison was sentenced to life in prison. He would die there. But for Barbara it wasn't enough. As they never found Sarah. The 3 bodies found at Morrison's house were identified through DNA. Jennifer Harris. Michelle Cordero. Lisa Templeton. 3 of the 8 girls. But Sarah wasn't one of them. Neither were the other 4 girls. Where were they? Morrison refused to talk. Refused to admit anything. Refused to tell anyone what he had done with the bodies. The police searched his other properties. A cabin he'd owned. Storage units he'd rented. Nothing. 5 girls were still missing. 5 families still had no closure. Including Barbara. Barbara couldn't give up. Not when she was this close. Morrison knew where Sarah was. He had to tell her. She tried to visit him in prison. He refused to see her. She wrote letters. He didn't respond. She begged the prosecutor to make a deal. Information in exchange for better conditions. Morrison's lawyer said his client had nothing to say. Barbara was back where she started. Knowing what happened to Sarah but not where she was. It was almost worse than not knowing. Almost. Then Barbara got a call from Maria Santos. "I found something. Meet me at your house." When Maria arrived, she brought a map. "I've been thinking about Morrison," Maria said. "About how he operated. The 3 girls we found were buried at his house. That's risky. Why would he bury them there unless it was convenient? Unless he had no choice? But the other 5? He must have taken them somewhere else. Somewhere he felt safe. Somewhere he had access to. I've been looking at properties he had connection to. Family properties. places he could go without suspicion. Maria spread out the map. Morrison's uncle owned a farm. 40 acres. Morrison inherited it when the uncle died in 1985. The farm was abandoned. No one has lived there in decades. If I was hiding something, that's where I'd hide it. Barbara and Maria drove to the farm. It was overgrown, falling apart. They walked the property for hours, looking for disturbed earth, areas that seemed unusual. And then near the back of the property, Barbara saw it. A small clearing. The ground was slightly sunken in several spots, like something had been buried and the earth had settled over time. Barbara called the police. They came with ground-penetrating radar. They found anomalies. They started digging. And they found them. 5 graves. 5 sets of remains. Took weeks for DNA testing. But eventually the identifications came back. All 5 missing girls, including Sarah Mitchell. Barbara finally knew. After 43 years, her daughter was dead. Had been dead since June 1981. Murdered by the detective who was supposed to find her. Buried on a farm where no one would look. Hidden by a man who used his badge as a weapon. Barbara stood at Sarah's grave before they excavated it. She knelt in the dirt and finally said goodbye. "I never stopped looking for you," Barbara whispered. "I never gave up. I'm so sorry I couldn't save you. I'm so sorry it took so long to find you. But I found you. And everyone knows the truth now. Everyone knows what he did. You're not forgotten, Sarah. You never were." Barbara had Sarah's remains cremated. She held a funeral 43 years overdue. Sarah's friends came. Now in their 60s. They cried for the girl they'd lost. They remembered her dreams. Her laugh. Her plans for the future that was stolen from her. The other families held funerals too. 8 girls finally laid to rest. 8 families finally getting closure. It didn't erase the decades of pain. It didn't bring their daughters back. But it was something. It was an ending. And for people who had lived in limbo for decades, an ending was a gift. The police department issued a formal apology. "We failed these families. We failed these girls. We allowed a predator to operate unchecked. We ignored warnings. We dismissed evidence. We're sorry." The apology rang hollow to Barbara. Sorry didn't bring Sarah back. Sorry didn't give her 43 years with her daughter. But it was acknowledgement. Finally. After decades of being dismissed. Her pain was acknowledged. Barbara finally has answers. But the cost was 43 years of her life. 43 years of searching. Of being dismissed. Of being told she was crazy for not giving up. If this story has affected you, if you've ever been told to stop searching for truth, I need you to subscribe to this channel right now. We tell the stories that demand justice. That refuse to let victims be forgotten. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. Share this video. Because Barbara's fight isn't over yet. Stay with me to see what she does with her second chance at life. Barbara Mitchell is 74 years old now. Sarah has been laid to rest. Morrison died in prison last year. The case is closed. But Barbara's work isn't finished. She couldn't save Sarah. She couldn't get back the 43 years she lost. But she could make sure it never happened again. Barbara used the settlement money from her lawsuit against the police department to start a foundation. The Sarah Mitchell Foundation for Missing Children. The foundation does what the police should have done from the beginning. They investigate thoroughly. They follow every lead. They take every tip seriously. They never classify a missing child as a runaway until every other possibility has been exhausted. Barbara partnered with Maria Santos. Together, they train law enforcement on how to properly investigate missing persons cases. They teach about red flags, about patterns, about taking families seriously. They've helped solve 17 cases so far. 17 families got answers because Barbara refused to let Sarah's death be meaningless. The abandoned police station was finally demolished. But before it was torn down, Barbara went back one more time. She stood in the evidence room where she'd found the truth. Where she'd discovered the pattern. Where she'd finally understood what had happened to her daughter. Barbara thought about that night. How terrified she'd been. How desperate. How she'd broken the law because the law had failed her. And how that desperate act had led to justice for 8 families. Led to Morrison's arrest. Led to answers. If Barbara hadn't broken into that station, Morrison would have died a free man. The evidence would have been destroyed with the building. The truth would have stayed buried. The families would never have known. Barbara had saved them from a lifetime of not knowing. And that meant something. Barbara's house is different now. For 43 years she kept it exactly as it was the day Sarah disappeared. Sarah's room untouched. Photos everywhere. A shrine to waiting. But now Barbara has started living again. She redecorated. She painted. She turned Sarah's room into an office for the foundation. He put away most of the photos, keeping just a few. She's building a new life. Not moving on. She'll never move on. But moving forward. There's a difference. Barbara receives letters every week. From families of missing people. From people who were dismissed by police. From people who have been searching for years with no answers. She responds to everyone. She offers help when she can. She offers hope always. Because if Barbara could find answers after 43 years, anyone can. It's never too late for truth. Never too late for justice. Barbara often thinks about what her life would have been if she'd never found the evidence. If the building had been demolished. If she'd given up. She would have died not knowing. Wondering forever. That would have been worse than the truth. Even a painful truth is better than eternal uncertainty. Barbara is often asked if she's found peace. She always answers honestly. "No, I'll never have peace. My daughter was murdered. I lost 43 years with her. I'll carry that pain until I die. But I have purpose. I have meaning. I can help others. And that's something. It's not peace. But it's enough to keep living. And that's all any of us can hope for when we lose someone we love." Barbara visits Sarah's grave every week. He brings flowers. He talks to her daughter. He tells her about the foundation. About the families they've helped. About the changes they've made. About how Sarah's death, though tragic and unfair and enraging, has created something good. Has saved others. Has meant something. "I hope you'd be proud," Barbara whispers at the grave. "I hope you'd understand why I did what I did. Why I couldn't stop. Why I'll never stop. I love you, Sarah. I always will. And I'll make sure no other mother has to go through what I went through. That's my promise to you." Barbara Mitchell will spend the rest of her life keeping that promise. Fighting for the missing. Fighting for justice. Fighting to make sure that the system that failed her daughter never fails another family. It's not redemption. She doesn't want redemption. He wants accountability. Change. Justice. And she'll fight for it until her last breath. Barbara Mitchell took refuge in an abandoned police station to escape the cold. But what she found there was something else entirely. The truth about her daughter's disappearance. Evidence of a serial killer who hid behind a badge for decades. Proof that the system had failed not just her daughter but 8 families. And the knowledge that if she had given up, if she had accepted the police's classification of Sarah as a runaway, the truth would never have come out. Morrison would have died free. The families would never have had closure. And justice would never have been served. Old woman took refuge in abandoned police station. What she found in evidence room changed her life. That's the headline. But the real story is about a mother who refused to give up. Who refused to accept the system's failures. Who broke the law because the law had broken her. And who, in her darkest moment in an abandoned building on a cold night, found the evidence that had been there all along. Evidence that nobody bothered to look for. Evidence that was locked away and forgotten. Until Barbara found it. The Sarah Mitchell Foundation has helped solve 32 cases now. 32 families who got answers because Barbara wouldn't let Sarah's death be meaningless. 32 people who came home or whose remains were found or whose killers were caught, because Barbara built a system that works when the official system fails. It's not enough. It will never be enough. Sarah is still dead. 43 years are still lost. But it's something. It's purpose. It's meaning. It's justice, imperfect and delayed, but justice nonetheless. Barbara Mitchell is 74 years old. She lives in a house that's no longer a shrine but a home. She runs a foundation that saves lives. She works with the same investigator who tried to stop Morrison decades ago. And every night she thinks about Sarah. About the 16-year-old girl with dreams of becoming a veterinarian. The girl who trusted the wrong person. The girl whose case was dismissed as a runaway by the man who killed her. And Barbara makes the same promise she makes every night. "I won't let them forget you. I won't let your death be for nothing. I'll keep fighting. For you. For all of them. Until I can't fight anymore." That's what it means to be a mother. To never give up. Even when everyone tells you to. Even when the system fails you. Even when 43 years pass and you're told it's impossible. You keep fighting. Because giving up means they win. Means the predators and the corrupt and the incompetent win. And Barbara Mitchell will never let them win. Not as long as she's breathing. Thank you for staying with me through Barbara's entire story. This one was difficult. Because it's not about redemption or forgiveness. It's about a system that fails victims. About incompetence and corruption. About a mother who had to break the law to get justice because the law wouldn't give it to her. If this story made you angry, good. Use that anger. Channel it. Demand better from the systems that are supposed to protect us. Subscribe to this channel right now. We tell the stories that matter. The uncomfortable truths about systems that fail. The people who suffer because those systems prioritize convenience over justice. Hit that notification bell. Like this video. Share it. Especially share it with anyone in law enforcement. Anyone studying criminal justice. Anyone who thinks the system works fine the way it is. Because Barbara's story proves it doesn't. Leave a comment telling me what you think. Should Barbara have broken into that police station? Did she do the right thing? What would you have done in her position? These are important questions. And I want to hear your answers. Most importantly, if you know someone whose loved one is missing, share this video with them. Let them know they're not alone. Let them know that fighting is worth it. That truth is possible. That justice, though delayed, can still come. Visit the Sarah Mitchell Foundation website if you want to help. Donate if you can. Volunteer if you're able. And if you're in law enforcement, learn from this case. Don't be Detective Morrison. Don't dismiss families. Don't ignore patterns. Don't let your pride or your workload or your assumptions stop you from doing thorough investigations. Every missing person deserves to be taken seriously. Every family deserves answers. Every victim deserves justice. Thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for caring about these stories. Thank you for believing that the stories of those who suffer matter. Until next time, remember that truth doesn't have an expiration date. That justice can come after decades. That mothers never stop fighting for their children. And that sometimes, the evidence that changes everything is sitting in a dusty box in an abandoned building, waiting for someone brave enough to find it. Rest in peace, Sarah Mitchell. Your mother never stopped looking for you. And because she didn't, 7 other families got closure too. Your death meant something. Your story mattered. And you will never be forgotten.